Hello again. I'm back with another clock. This one I found at a local thrift store, and it didn't seem to be working. When I gave the pendulum a push, it wouldn't go for too long. I didn't have a key to it, so I couldn't tell if it was wound or not. But I asked the owner how much she wanted for it, and she told me $10. So I got it. I have no idea how old it is or who the manufacturer is. There's no writing on it. It just has the one arbor in the front for winding, and when I turn it around to the back, it has what looks to me to be a fairly modern type of wood piece in the back. And if I open it up, the pendulum really doesn't move for very long at all. But more interestingly is when I came up with a key for it, and when I wind it, I find that it won't wind. It's not catching. So I'm going to have to open it up to try to figure out what's going on with it. The first step will be to get it on my work table, and once it's open, maybe I'll have a better idea of who the manufacturer is and exactly how old it is. If I had to describe this, I'd call it a Gothic mantel clock, and I think the first thing I want to do is remove the hands. Okay, let's see if I can remove the pendulum. I'm not sure how that's attached, but it's not really coming free, so let me flip it over and I'll remove the back. I just see 3 screws holding it in. There's 2. Okay, let's see what we have here. This looks very different. All right. So, how does this come out of here? A couple of screws holding this whole case onto the mechanism. Now, let's start by removing those and we'll see what happens. All right. Okay, so how to remove this? All right, let me take the, you know what? I'm thinking that these brass circles around the arbor and the stem, I think they're threaded on here. Maybe I can unscrew them and the whole thing will drop out. Let's see if that's what's happening here. So, to rotate this, that might take some doing. Oh, this one's turning. And I want to try to turn this without scratching. This is just a paper dial. I'll just put my hand behind it so it just doesn't drop out. Okay. Let's put this aside. Interesting. So what I'm thinking is, if I can't wind it, there should be a click that locks it into place as you wind these, and that might not be catching, but I'm going to have to take a closer look to figure out how best to take this apart. So give me a few minutes to kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. Okay, what I've done is I've taken several photos so I have a good idea of the arrangement of the gears on the inside for once I'm able to take it apart. I also noticed some very small printing on this back plate, and it reads Urgos, U-R-G-O-S. It says made in Germany, no jewels, and unadjusted. And some printing underneath it reads UW 22/12. Now, I'm not familiar with a company named Urgos, so I looked it up, and what I learned was that they were founded in 1920, and they made very high-quality, reliable clock movements. They were most noted for making grandfather clocks, but in the 1950s, they began to just make movements, and other companies would use them in their clocks. Now, what I'm noticing as far as taking this apart is that I'm not seeing any screws that I can undo to remove this. But what I do see, this is kind of definitely different. I'll try to show it. But there are some small C-clips that are holding the whole mechanism to this plate. One of them is right here. Another one is under the spring a little bit. That might be hard to get to. And the third one is over here. There it is. So I have to kind of pry those off, and I think that will lift this whole thing out of here. Another thing that I'm trying to figure out is just how old the clock is. The Urgos company ended up going out of business in the 1970s, in around 1970 is what I'm reading. And that tells me that this may have been manufactured sometime in the 1960s, and the clock was purchased by some other company, which made the case. And the reason I'm thinking 1960s is because the wood on the back, this is very reminiscent of the type of wood you would see on the back of hi-fi sets in the 1960s or the back of large televisions. So anyway, I'm kind of going to go with the 1960s on this one. What I want to do now is see if I can remove these C-clips. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you want to try to pry these out, and hopefully they don't go flying away. That's too big. There's one. I'm going to go ahead and pop off the other two, and then I'll continue. All three are out. Let's see what happens when I try to remove this. Well, it's free from two of the posts. How about the third one here? There we go. Okay, so here is the click, which is not locking into the ratchet wheel here. And this is the spring that's supposed to push the click down. So I need to adjust this to bend it up. And I think that's all that it'll take to get this to wind. So let's see how I'm going to do that. I think I have to bend this down and up at the same time. So let's see if that works. Like that. Look at that. I think I got it. All right. So now, let's place this back in here. I'm going to go ahead and reattach the 3 C-clips on my own. That'll take a few minutes, and then I'll be ready to continue. I've got it back on. Now to place this back into the case. And secure it with a couple of screws. A little too tight. All right, so now let me wind it up a bit more. And I'm going to place this back into the case. Okay. Whoop. Hang on. Not quite lined up right. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. Maybe not. Nope. Hang on. Oh, that was a bit of an effort, wasn't it? So what I'm going to do now is set this back up on my workbench, hang the pendulum, and we'll see if it's actually going to work. It's set up, the pendulum is attached, and I'll start it. it sounds like it has stopped already. And one thing I think I noticed is that it sounds like it's not in beat. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's sort of going tick-tock, 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 instead of a steady tick-tock, tick-tock. And one way to correct something like that is you actually have to tilt the clock. So if I raise it up, it just started going on its own. And I think you can hear a steady tick-tock. Now, to correct a clock that is off like this, rather than have to put it on a tilt, you have to adjust what's called the crutch, which is the bar that the suspension spring fits through. And you have to, by adjusting it, you're bending it. And you have to bend it towards the side that's tilted up. So I'm going to have to work on that. And what I think I can do is remove this cowl. Don't lose the screw. Let's get the pendulum off of here. Okay, let's try it again. It's the bar right here. I'm going to have to tilt it, bend it a little bit towards the left to keep it going. So I'm going to work on that on my own, and once I have it adjusted, and I'll test it, and when I think it's good to go, I will continue. I've adjusted the crutch, and I now have the clock level and running in beat. And I found that there were two types of a crutch with these clocks. One is called a wire, and the other is a flat crutch. And this one is the flat one. A wire crutch is rather easy to bend to the left or to the right. This one, however, was a lot more difficult. And I tried to look up techniques on how to properly adjust a flat crutch, but wasn't able to learn anything. So on my own, what I did was, using just two pairs of needle nose pliers, grabbed the top portion of it and held it still, while with the other set of pliers I just twisted the crutch to the left. And I'll show you how it came out. The bottom of the crutch is called the foot, and you can see now how it's tilted towards the left, and that was enough to get the clock running properly. So in case you're trying to do that on your own, that's one way that seems to work. What I want to do now is I'm going to remove the movement, and it's rather clean, so I don't have to take it apart, but I will lubricate all the pivots on it. And once that's been done, my next step will be I want to clean off any dirt on the case. I'll go over it with my Howard's Restore finish, and as well as I want to clean up the dial because there's a lot of dirt on the front of that. But that's the plan, and let me get to work on it. Using an oil pen and some synthetic clock oil, I lubricated all the pivots, just a little bit around each one, and I removed the movement from this plate so I could lubricate both sides of it. And what I'm going to work on next is cleaning up the dial. You can see just how much dirt is on here. I think a lot of it will come off. And then clean up the case. I'm sure there's a lot of dirt on it. There's a lot of scuff marks. I think the Howard's Restore finish will blend that in rather nicely. And we'll take it from there. I've cleaned up the case, and went over it with my Restore finish. I think that this is more of a painted surface than a stained one, as the Restore finish stain didn't really get picked up on these open areas. But I still think it's looking better than it did before. I also cleaned the glass as well as the dial. I even polished the little brass nuts that hold the clock into the case. And what I want to do next is place this, which I believe is more of a dust cover than anything, back over the movement. And I'm going to secure it with the 2 screws on my own, and then I'll continue. It's back on. Next, I'm going to place this in the case. And we'll see if I can get the nuts over it a little bit easier than the last time. Well, that was much better. What I'm going to work on next is seating the hands. First, I have to seat the minute hand, figure out where it goes. It only fits one position. Okay. And then move it to the 12. And then I can remove it. And then seat the hour hand. And the minute hand. And then tighten it up with a small nut. Okay. Next, what I want to do is seat the pendulum. Okay, now I want to place the back into position. But what I discovered is when I mentioned this textured surface, how it looks like the backs of hi-fi sets and TVs from the 60s, it's the same surface that the inside has. But when I flip it over, it's a pretty good looking piece of wood. And I think this is really meant to go on the back. So this is how I'm going to, if it fits. And the holes over here, it actually was originally screwed on in this way, but let me see if I can get it to fit this way. Well, it really doesn't fit. How about that? All right, and I'll put it back this way. Okay, I'm just going to position the 3 screws, and I'll do that on my own. And once it's in, I'm going to set it up on my work table and see if it's still running. I have it set up, and I have let it run overnight just to make sure that it is running, and it's also keeping pretty good time. And I think if I open the door, you can hear that it is in beat. So there you have it. It's what I'm referring to as a Gothic Mantel clock. I don't know the company that made the case, but the clock movement is made by Urgos, which was a German clock company. I believe it's from the 1960s. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions and comments on it. And that pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.